This video will present topics of murder, violence, and death. It is thus unsuitable for all audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
Saint Timothy is a revered figure in Christian tradition, known primarily as a close associate and disciple of Apostle Paul. His life and ministry are described in the New Testament, particularly in the Acts of the Apostles and the Pauline epistles. Here is a brief but exhaustive biography of Saint Timothy based on biblical and historical traditions. Timothy's name is derived from the Greek words time, which means honor, and theos, which means God, meaning one who honors God. He was likely born in Lystra, a city in the Roman province of Lycaonia, modern-day Turkey. He was born to as a son of a Greek father, whose name is not mentioned in the Bible, and a Jewish Christian mother, Eunice. His grandmother, Lois, is also mentioned in Scripture as a devout believer. See 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. This mixed heritage gave Timothy a unique position to bridge Jewish and Gentile audiences in his ministry. Timothy was raised in the Jewish faith by his mother and grandmother, who taught them the Hebrew scriptures from a young age. See 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 15. Despite his father being Greek, Timothy was a deeply rooted child in Jewish tradition. Timothy first encountered Paul during Paul's first missionary journey to Lystra and Derbe. See Acts chapter 14, verses 6 through 23. However, Timothy likely became a disciple during Paul's second missionary work. See Acts chapter 16, verses 1 to 3, where Paul was impressed by Timothy's faith and reputation among the believers in Lystra and Iconium. Although Timothy was already a believer, Paul had him circumcised to avoid offending Jewish audiences during his missionary works. See Acts chapter 16, verse 3. This was a practical decision to enhance Timothy's effectiveness in ministry, as his father was a Gentile. Timothy became one of Paul's most trusted companions and was often described as his beloved son in faith. See 1 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 17 and 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 2. He played a critical role in assisting Paul with the early church's growth and governance. Timothy accompanied Paul on numerous missionary journeys across Asia Minor, Macedonia, and Greece. Paul frequently sent Timothy to represent him and address issues to early churches. To the Thessalonians, Timothy was sent as a strengthen their faith and to encourage them during persecution. For the Corinthians, Timothy was sent to remind them of Paul's teachings and address divisions in the church. Timothy was named as a co-author as well in several of Paul's letters, including 2 Corinthians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and Philemon. Timothy was appointed by Paul to oversee the church in Ephesus, one of the most prominent Christian communities of the time. See 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 3. His responsibilities included combating false teachings, appointing leaders, and organizing the church. Paul often praised Timothy's loyalty, sincerity, and dedication to the gospel. Timothy had been naturally timid or hesitant, But as Paul encouraged him to be bold and not let others look down on his youth, he grew as a person and as a leader. Paul also advised him to overcome fear and to rely on the power of the Holy Spirit. Timothy appeared to have health issues, however, as Paul recommended he use little wine for his stomach and frequent ailments. Later in life, according to tradition, Timothy continued to lead the church in Ephesus after Paul's martyrdom around 64 to 67 AD. He remained a key figure and maintained the church's orthodoxy and combated heresies. Timothy is believed to have been martyred around 97 AD during the reign of Emperor Nerva or Domitian. According to traditions, he was likely killed by a mob in Ephesus while trying to stop a pagan festival in honor of the goddess Diana, otherwise known as Artemis. He was reportedly beaten to death with clubs for preaching the gospel. Timothy's relics were later transferred to Constantinople by Emperor Constantine in the 4th century. Saint Timothy's is commemorated on January 26th in the Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and some Anglican and Lutheran traditions. The date is shared with Saint Titus. Timothy is regarded as a patron saint of intestinal and stomach disorders, reflecting Paul's reference to his health issues. Although Timothy did not write any of the books of the New Testament, his life and ministries are immortalized through Paul's letters, particularly pastoral epistles, 1st and 2nd Timothy. These letters provide guidance to the church on leadership, sound doctrine, and personal conduct as they highlight Timothy's vital role in early Christianity. St. Timothy's life is an inspiration, an example of faith, humility, and dedication to the gospel. As a trusted disciple of Paul and a leader in the early church, he played a crucial role in spreading Christianity and nurturing the fledgling Christian communities. His legacy continues to inspire believers to live faithfully and to serve with courage. St. Timothy's iconography reflects his role as an early Christian leader, companion of St. Paul, and bishop of the early church. Over the centuries, artistic traditions in both the Western and Eastern churches have developed symbols and representations that emphasize his life, ministry, and martyrdom. Here's a brief exploration of his iconography. Saint Timothy is typically depicted as a young or middle aged man with short, neatly trimmed beard, often reflecting his youth and vitality as Paul's disciple. In some depictions, he may appear slightly older, symbolizing his role as a bishop and church leader. He is often shown wearing vestments of a bishop, including a chasuble, pallium, or a morphorion, emphasizing his position as a bishop of Ephesus. In earlier or simpler depictions, he may have been wearing a plain tunic or cloak, reflecting his role as a humble servant and missionary. Saint Timothy is often shown with specific attributes or symbols that reflect key aspects of his life and martyrdom. This often includes books or scrolls, which represents his role as a teacher, evangelist, and guardian of apostolic traditions. The scroll or codex may also symbolize the letters addressed to him by St. Paul, 1st Timothy, and 2nd Timothy, which emphasize his role is in close relationship with the Apostle Paul and his work in representing and preserving sound doctrine. Some icons may also depict Timothy holding an epistle, specifically one of Paul's letters, to highlight his direct connection to Pauline theology and the early church's writing tradition. He may also be shown with a staff or crozier, a common symbol of episcopal authority, emphasizing Timothy's leadership as a bishop of Ephesus. He may also be shown with a palm branch, which is a symbol of martyrdom in Christian iconography. It reflects his death for the faith according to tradition. He may also be shown with clubs or stone. In some icons focusing on his martyrdom, Timothy is sometimes depicted with these instruments of death, clubs or stones, recalling the mob attack in Ephesus, where he was beaten to death for preaching against pagan rituals. He may be shown with a torch or flame in many depictions to symbolize the fiery zeal of his faith or his role in spreading the light of the gospel. In Western iconography, Timothy is often shown with a mitre or bishop's vestments or other episcopal garments, underscoring his authority as a bishop. In Eastern Orthodox Christian traditions, icons of Saint Timothy are often adhere to a specific style or symbolic language. They often show three things: halos, posture, and facial expression. Like all saints in Orthodox iconography, Timothy is depicted with a golden halo, symbolizing divine grace and his sanctity. As for his posture, he is often shown standing or half length, holding a scroll or a book in one hand and raising the other in gesture of blessing. Icons emphasize a calm and peaceful demeanor on his facial expression, reflecting his humility and spiritual depth. In Western art, St. Timothy's iconography often focuses on his martyrdom and leadership. When concerning scenes of his martyrdom, paintings and stained glass may depict Timothy being beaten by a mob in Ephesus, often near the temple of Artemis, to commemorate his death for opposing pagan worship. Timothy is frequently shown, according to St. Paul, symbolized with their close relationship. In these depictions, he may be appearing as a youthful and earnest disciple, contrasting with Paul's older and more mature and authoritative appearance. Some notable iconographic scenes include Timothy receiving instructions from Paul. This highlights his role as a disciple and spiritual son of the Apostle Paul. This often shows Timothy kneeling or seated, listening attentively as Paul teaches or writes. They also may show Timothy preaching. Depictions of Timothy teaching the gospel, often addressing the crowd in Ephesus or other locations of his ministry, is an important scene in his iconography. He's often shown with gestures of exhortation or blessing, reinforcing his role as a preacher and leader. There also may be scenes of Timothy's martyrdom, a dramatic depiction of Timothy being attacked by a mob while preaching against pagan practices. Common elements include clubs, stones, and a backdrop of the temple of Artemis in Ephesus. There are, of course, many colors that are used, typically gold, red, blue, and green. Gold represents divine light, sanctity, and the glory of God, while as red symbolizes martyrdom, sacrifice, and Timothy's steadfast faith, while as blue reflects his heavenly focus and spiritual wisdom. Finally, green, which occasionally is used to symbolize growth, renewal, and his role in nurturing the early church. Modern iconography in Christian tradition shows St. Timothy is still being depicted in line with traditional elements, but often with simpler and more accessible designs, particularly in churches and devotional art. St. Timothy's iconography serves as a reminder of the faithfulness to Christ that he had, his role in the early church, and his martyrdom. His symbols, such as the scroll and palm branch, have become a lasting representation of his contributions to Christianity and enduring legacy as a model of discipline and leadership. The historical and biblical record does not explicitly attribute specific miracles to St. Timothy during his lifetime. Unlike some saints, Timothy's life is primarily known through his relationship with the Apostle Paul, his role in the early church, and his contributions as bishop and martyr. However, the veneration of Saint Timothy has been associated with miraculous events, particularly through his intercession after his passing. Here's a brief account of the miracles and traditions tied to Saint Timothy. The New Testament does not record Timothy performing miracles. However, his close association with St. Paul, who performed numerous miracles, implies Timothy at least witnessed miraculous works and possibly assisted in Paul's ministry. Timothy's role was more pastoral, focusing on teaching, organizing churches, and combating heresy. As with many saints, St. Timothy's legacy and intercession became associated with miraculous occurrences after his passing. These miracles are typically recounted in Christian traditions and hagiographical accounts. Here are some notable traditions: the healing of illness. Timothy has long been regarded as the patron saint of those suffering from intestinal and stomach ailments. This is likely linked to the Paul's advice to Timothy in Timothy 1, chapter 5, verse 23. No longer drink only water, but use a little wine for the sake of your stomach and your frequent ailments, as it said. Numerous accounts from the early church and medieval period describe people being healed of gastrointestinal and related illnesses through prayers and veneration of Saint Timothy. Miracles associated with his relics. After his martyrdom in Ephesus, Timothy's relics were reportedly venerated by the early Christians community. Relics of Timothy were believed to have healing properties, and many faithful sought his intercession for various illnesses and afflictions. In the 4th century, St. Timothy's relics were transferred to Constantinople under the reign of Emperor Constantine the Great. It was said that miraculous healings and blessings occurred during the translation of the relics and the shrine where they were housed. Protection of Constantinople. During the Byzantine era, Saint Timothy was invoked as emperor and protector of Constantinople. His relics were believed to provide divine protection for the city and protection against invasions and natural disasters. Some accounts attribute miraculous of the victories, or excuse me, of the averting of calamities to his intercession. And just a minor correction, St. Timothy was not the emperor, it was Constantinople who's declared as emperor of the city. In Christian tradition, several saints and holy individuals were reported to have visions of St. Timothy appearing to them in times of crisis. These visions often involved Timothy providing encouragement, guidance, or miraculous intervention to strengthen their faith or resolve conflicts within the church. There are, of course, many miraculous conversions of pagans. While not explicitly detailed in historical accounts, early Christian hagiographies often credit martyrs and bishops like Timothy with miraculous conversions. In Ephesus, where Timothy served as a bishop, it is believed he played a significant role in turning many pagans to Christianity. The boldness of his preaching, especially in opposing the worship of Artemis, was viewed as spiritually powerful and transformative. Martyrdom and its witness. Although not considered a traditional miracle, Timothy's martyrdom itself inspired many conversions. According to tradition, Timothy was unalived for denouncing the pagan festival in honor of Artemis. His courage and steadfast faith were seen as a testimony to God's power, leading many witnesses to embrace Christianity. There are, of course, many contemporary accounts in modern times. Saint Timothy is still invoked by Christians for healing and protection. Stories of answered prayers and miraculous recoveries attributed to his intercession are part of his ongoing legacy, especially in communities where he's venerated. St. Timothy's legacy lies not only in the miraculous accounts, but also in his unwavering faith, dedication to the gospel, and role as a leader in the early church. His life continues to inspire devotion and trust in God's power. The canonization process, as it exists today in the Roman Catholic Church, with its formalized steps and procedures, did not exist in the early centuries of Christianity. Saint Timothy, like many of the early Christian martyrs and saints, was not canonized through a structured process, but rather recognized as a saint by the early church through popular veneration, tradition, and recognition of his holiness, martyrdom, and service to the Christian faith. Here's a brief explanation of how Saint Timothy became a recognized saint within the early church. In the first few centuries of Christianity, saints were typically recognized through local veneration rather than a formal process. Early Christians honored martyrs who died for their faith, considering them to be in the presence of God and capable of interceding for the faithful. Saint Timothy was venerated as a saint because of his close relationship as well with the Apostle Paul, his role as a bishop and leader in the early church, and his martyrdom, of course, in Ephesus around 97 AD. His martyrdom was seen as the ultimate testimony of his faith, and those who passed away for Christ were almost automatically regarded as saints. In the early church, The criteria for recognizing someone as a saint included holiness of life. Timothy's life as a disciple, missionary, and bishop was marked by faithfulness, humility, and dedication to spreading the gospel. The recognition also included his martyrdom, as Timothy was dying for his faith, was considered as a definitive sign of sanctity. Timothy's death at the hands of a pagan mob for opposing the worship of Artemis, or otherwise known as Diana, in Ephesus, fulfilled his criterion. His apostolic connection was also part of the recognition. Timothy's close association with the Apostle Paul and his mention in Scripture solidified his reputation as a saint. Finally, there was, of course, the recognition by popular veneration. The early Christian community in Ephesus began honoring Timothy as a saint shortly after his passing, a practice that spread to other Christian communities. Timothy's relics also played a significant role in his veneration. After his martyrdom, the faithful preserved his remains, which were considered holy. Pilgrimages to his burial site in Ephesus began, and miraculous healings were attributed to his intercession. In the 4th century, during the reign of Emperor Constantine, Timothy's relics were transferred to Constantinople. This act elevated his status as a saint in the eyes of the broader Christian community and encouraged widespread devotion. There was, of course, a liturgical recognition. As the church grew and developed a more organized structure, the veneration of saints like Timothy became formalized through inclusion in the liturgical calendar. By the time of the early ecumenical councils during the 4th and 5th centuries, Timothy was recognized universally as a saint. His feast day was established on January 26, shared with Saint Titus, another companion of Paul. While Saint Timothy was recognized as a saint through early Christian traditions, it is helpful to understand how the canonization process evolved into its current form. By the 10th century, the Roman Catholic Church began formalizing the process of canonization to ensure consistency in recognizing saints. This involved detailed investigations into the candidate's life, virtues, miracles, and devotion. St. Timothy, however, had already been venerated for centuries by this time, and his sainthood was never subject to the formalized process that was developed. He is considered a pre congregational saint, meaning he is recognized as a saint before the establishment of the modern canonization procedures. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, St. Timothy had already been venerated as a saint since the early centuries. The Orthodox Church does not follow the formalized canonization process of the Catholic Church, but instead relies on liturgical recognition and the continuity of veneration within the community of believers. Modern Catholic canonization process is here to better understand how St. Timothy's recognition differs from modern saints. Here is a brief overview of the canonization process in the Catholic Church today. First, a person is determined to be a servant of God. Here, the individual's cause is introduced to the local bishop. Then they are recognized as venerable. The candidate's life is investigated for heroic virtue in this step. Next is beatification. At least one miracle attributed to the candidate's intercession is verified for its authenticity. Finally, the canonization, where a second verified miracle is required for full sainthood. Saint Since Timothy's sainthood predates this process, his recognition relied on early church tradition, apostolic apostolic connection, and widespread veneration. St. Timothy's legacy and ongoing veneration. St. Timothy's feast day celebrated on January 26th in both Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. He is considered the patron saint of those suffering from stomach and intestinal ailments, reflecting his personal struggles, as mentioned in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 23. Timothy's sainthood is recognized across major Christian traditions, including Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, Anglicanism, Lutheranism, demonstrating the enduring impact of his life and martyrdom. In conclusion, St. Timothy was canonized in the sense of the early church recognition through popular veneration. His close connection to the apostles, as well as his role as a martyr for the faith. His sainthood was affirmed by early Christian community and remains universally acknowledged within Christianity. Unlike modern saints, Timothy's recognition did not require a formalized canonization process, as his life and martyrdom spoke directly to the faith and devotion that defined sanctity in the early church tradition.